There we go. The Keep SA Moving plan builds on work that was undertaken by VIA with the community in developing VIA Vision 2040 and the VIA Reimagined plan. The Keep SA Moving plan is how our agency responded to the changing landscape due to COVID-19 to ensure that our strategic plan as designed is able to improve the transit and mobility network that contributes to our economy, addresses population growth, and will help our community recover from the pandemic. On the screen here, you can see the different ways that residents are able to travel with VIA today. And yes, some of these photos were taken pre-COVID. While the number of people on board any given vehicle may have changed in the past few months, the way that VIA moves our residents around the community continues today. In order to understand our system, it's helpful to know who uses VIA. The data that you see here on the screen comes from a 2019, so pre-COVID, a 2019 survey that was undertaken to help VIA answer who is the VIA rider. The typical VIA rider is employed. 72% of our riders are employed and work full-time. That includes working at least one weekend day each week. Our typical rider utilizes VIA 5 to 7 days a week. Almost 70% of our riders live at below the federal poverty level. They make less than $25,000 per year. The majority have at least a high school diploma, and almost 60% have no motor vehicles in their households. Now, based on these survey results and the fact that our ridership dropped only 45% during stay-at-home orders compared to 80 and 90% nationally, what we can conclude from these statistics is that VIA riders not only use VIA as their only means of transportation on average, but our riders are really those essential workers who are keeping our economy moving, both during the pandemic and recovery. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my screen here. Can you guys see the—
Yeah, those are great slides.
That's currently on the—
Yep.
Can anybody hear me right now?
I can.
Okay, for some reason I don't have volume, but I see Mary Alice's hand raised, so I'm going to assume that you can hear me.
I can, yes.
Okay, all right, good. So in addition to helping support the community during the pandemic and during recovery, we need to prepare for future growth. According to the Alamo Area MPO, it's a study that they created based on U.S. Census data. The San Antonio area is going to see over 1 million new residents by 2040. More people, of course, equals more congestion. I'm sure that we've all experienced the increasing traffic now that the stay-at-home orders are no longer in effect. And as our population grows, the congestion and challenges in moving around freely in the city, whether it's for work or for school, will only continue to increase as well. And when it comes to transit, we know that our service at VIA is falling short of what the community needs now. The community has told not only us, but others, that how frequent a transit vehicle is helps determine their ability and their interest in using transit as an alternative mode of travel. So you can see by this study conducted by the MPO that longer waits for the bus generate less interest in riding. 20 minutes or longer is sort of that sweet spot. Once a route hits 20 minutes or longer in terms of wait times, interest in using that route drops to lower than 20%. Yet unfortunately, about 60% of our system currently operates in this range. So 60% of the service we offer now is only traveling at 20 minutes or slower. So let me repeat that. Based on available funding we have today, the bulk of the VIA system pre-COVID ran in this shaded area. So for those who rely on transit exclusively because they don't have cars or because they have mobility challenges are forced predominantly into this yellow band that you see here on the screen. I know I have limited time, so I'm going to skip around a little bit here. So we knew that we already had some work to do as we designed first the VIA Vision 2040, our long range plan, and then the VIA Reimagined plan. For over 3 years, we engaged the community, and the information that we learned is what shaped the Keep SA Moving plan, and it's really been at the core of the efforts VIA has conducted over the last 5 years. We heard from the community what benefits residents need to see and need to have from their transit system. Those include faster service and shorter waits, shorter travel times, more express routes, better weekend and late night service. That's especially important for our low wage workers who don't have those traditional 9-to-5 jobs. And these core elements are all part of the Keep SA Moving plan. The plan is intended and designed to improve the system, connect more people to more places with additional travel options. We have a focus on innovation in this plan. The plan is designed to expand mobility options, make more trip options other than just traditional bus service available to fit different and specific needs of riders, especially riders who have mobility challenges like residents with disabilities and our elderly community. And finally, the plan is designed to invest in capital and technology, helping advance rapid transit options and attracting additional federal funds to leverage local dollars. And I'll discuss a couple of these in more detail. First, we want to enhance the core network. We want to have most routes in our system operating at least 30 minutes or better. That means, again, a bus coming by a bus stop at least every 30 minutes. But you can also see, I mentioned that the 20-minute mark is sort of that sweet spot. So if you look at 2017 compared to the future, we would be able to increase the routes running in that time frame as well. By providing more evening, late night, and weekend service, the VIA system today has a different schedule for Monday through Friday, and then a different schedule for Saturday, and then a different schedule for Sunday. That's just not convenient for, it's just not convenient for San Antonio workers, and it's not convenient for workers who have non-traditional work schedules. And so we want to make our schedules more consistent across the board throughout the week. The Keep SA Moving plan is intended to address these challenges. And we also want to improve transit coverage. The Keep SA Moving plan would provide more transit options across a larger part of the community. We would be able to expand our system coverage by about 30%. And where you really see those benefits is in the next slide. So the plan, if implemented, is designed, would allow 42% more San Antonians to have increased access to frequent bus service running every 15 minutes or better during peak hours. So for those homes with one car or less, those homes that are transit reliant, we would see a 40% increase to access. For those people with disabilities, we would see a 35% increase in access. A 44% increase in access for our seniors, and almost a 30% increase in access for our low income population. The plan is also designed and intended to expand mobility options by expanding our mobility on demand service. And for those of you who aren't familiar with mobility on demand, it is, at VIA, it's known as VIA Link. You may have heard that term. We launched it in 2019 in a 17 square mile zone in Northeast San Antonio. Now, in this zone, we pulled out the traditional bus service and we replaced it with an on-demand transit service, similar to Uber or Lyft, where you can call a vehicle up through an app on your phone or through a website or through a telephone number. But the difference is it operates on the same fare structure and prices as traditional VIA service. So instead of paying Uber and Lyft prices, you're paying only the cost of a general bus fare. Residents, once they book their trip, can access, their vehicle will take them anywhere in the designated zone or to any transit center within the zone where they can then access a traditional bus service. Under the Keep SA Moving plan, the service would expand from 17 square miles to 300 square miles across Bexar County. So instead of just that northeast light blue area on the northeast part of this map, all the blue sections are the current proposed mobility on demand expansion. So we would be able to expand that service throughout the city. The 3 stars on this map, the South Texas Medical Center, Port San Antonio, and Brooks, are proposed innovation zones where VIA would explore partnerships with third-party providers to access vehicles to help riders address those first mile, last mile challenges. So sometimes if a transit stop is a mile away, well, a mile is not that far away, but it sure is far if you're walking or if you don't have a car or if you're in your wheelchair or your scooter.
Right.
And these third-party partnerships would help you access those stops through vehicles on some type of vehicle or shuttle on demand. So again, the key elements of the plan are intended to support a growing population, connect more people to more jobs, support workforce training and education, improve the quality of transit reach and speed, reducing travel time, especially for those who are transit reliant, and maintain those opportunities for vulnerable populations in the community. So in short, we tried to craft a plan that is fully responsive to community needs, especially in the context of the pandemic and the eventual recovery over the course of the next 4 to 5 years. Now I have another section here on funding and the ballot question that is coming up in November, but I understand we have some folks here from the campaign, and I know they're going to be talking about that. So I'll go ahead and wrap up here. I'm happy to take any questions about the plan either now or through, I have a hard stop today at 2, but I can take questions through the chat later on. Thank you.
So just FYI, Marisa, in the Q&A, it says, will VIA expand commute to Schertz, San Marcos, or other cities in the future?
Well, I can't say any expansion out to San Marcos and out as far and outside of the San Antonio region are not in our current expansion plans, only because we're, you know what, let me go ahead and put this on. Only because of our current funding situation. VIA has been, can you guys see my screen?
No.
No, okay, hold on, let me work on this. We're limited in terms of our funding options right now, and we have been over the course of the past 40 years. How about that? Can you see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh, here we go. Good.
So since 1977, VIA has received less sales tax revenue than other large metropolitan transit authorities in Texas, and the lack of funding has dramatically affected our ability to provide service throughout San Antonio. And so because we're, as I mentioned earlier, only 40% of our system is operating at 20 minutes or better, and we still don't have service available or frequent service available to many of our residents in this area. It's just not financially feasible at this time, or probably any time within the reasonable future, only because while other cities have been enjoying a full cent of sales tax revenue over the course of the past 4 decades, here in San Antonio, we've only had access to about half of that penny. And so it's really limited our options in terms of service and innovation in service. Were there any other questions in the chat, Melanie?
No, that's it. Pammy was just saying she could see the interpreter, but there was one question: what is the process for getting another line of service? But it looks like if you want, I can provide you with if that's not applicable to this presentation. Is it?
It is, to the extent, so people, a common question we get is, how do I get a bus route closer to me, or how can you get a bus route added? The Keep SA Moving Plan is simply a framework. It's a collection of objectives that we want to try to achieve over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. But assuming more funding is approved by voters in November, as we plan which routes to expand and establish, there will be an extensive community engagement process by which we pose those types of questions to the public before we proceed.
Can you talk a little bit, just real quick, about how you do that through your teletown halls, your Facebook, and what are those opportunities, citizens to be heard, anything like that?
The board has been, hold on one moment. When this is so typical pandemic, I have someone at the door.
Melanie, I'd like to ask you if there are any partnerships with Shirts, Cibolo, and those other surrounding areas that people might want to ride into the city for special events. Or Bob, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can answer that from a board perspective. We would love for the very small municipalities to be part of VIA. In order to do that, though, they would, have to pay their share of the service. There are a number of small cities that would like to participate, but they're capped at their 1% maximum, and so they cannot come in, and they're not participating. But we would love to be in negotiations with them and bring them in. If they're willing to. There are 2 people on the VIA board who represent the municipal cities. One of them is a former mayor of Alamo Heights. The other is a former mayor of Chavano Park. And they represent the cities that do contribute to the funding for VIA.
Good. Thank you for that.
I'm back, Melanie. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. So if you could just tell people how they can participate in opportunities when VIA is asking for community feedback.
Yes, the board has, through the course of educating the community about the Keep SA Moving Plan, the board has been very specific with its instructions about ensuring that all sectors of the community have access to information, not just now, but after November, assuming the new funding source is approved. And so what we've tried to do are establish a number of different engagement opportunities that are open to people regardless of whether or not they have Wi-Fi. And part of that process has been establishing a series of tele-town halls where you can participate in a fully live interactive event for free through the telephone. It's fully ASL accessible if you're following along on Facebook Live on a streaming player. And it's also fully translated regardless of whether or not you're participating online or on the phone. We will be having one of those events every Wednesday for the next 3 weeks. We have average attendance is 1,500 to 2,000, so it's a really lively conversation. You can go to keepusamoving.com to register for those events. And we also have a community roundtable coming up next Friday. This is a roundtable that's specifically geared for residents with disabilities, but it's open to the entire community. We've invited about 25 different nonprofit and community organizations. And, you know, I said it was on the 9th, but I might be wrong. So I'll get that date and time right now and provide it in the chat.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those innovation hubs, are those like a park and ride kind of situations?
Well, what we're thinking is it wouldn't be necessarily park and ride because we want to make it accessible for people who don't necessarily have cars. So it would be maybe it's a shuttle service that meets at a certain point.
Yeah, like North Star Mall has, right? Kind of idea?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or maybe it's a shuttle service that could even go by someone's home. Yeah. We would need to look at more closely at what that would look like. But the difference is in the mobility on demand zones, the shuttle takes you anywhere inside the zone. Okay. But at these innovation zones, the new vehicles would just take you directly to the bus stop.
And where are those shuttles? It's Port San Antonio and
it's the port, Brooks, and the medical center.
And the medical center. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, Marissa, thank you so much for your presentation today. There aren't any more questions in the Q&A. We still have 9 attendees on this session. And so with that, I would like to kind of transition into the November ballot and what that means and looks like for our community. So there's some, I think that will be the panelists who are with yes, vote yes.
Very good. Well, okay. I'll be glad to start off. The Advanced Transportation District, which is the same board makeup as the VIA board, has Proposition A on the ballot. And when the voters pass this, it will reallocate 1/8% of the sales tax to transit beginning on January the 1st of 2026.
And Bob, would you talk a little bit about what reallocate means? Is that a new tax or is what does that mean?
It is not a new tax. It is a tax that is currently being collected and will be collected until about April or May of next year, 2021, when the $100 million that was voted on by the citizens about 5 years ago for aquifer protection and the Howard Peak trails will have reached its $100 million threshold. When that is completed, then that 1/8 cent sales tax, assuming that the city's Proposition B, which would fund workforce development, would then collect the money until the end of December of 2025, at which time, should the voters approve our Proposition A for the Advanced Transportation District, will kick in the 1/8 cent sales tax for VIA. I know this is complicated, and it's unfortunate that it's complicated. But back in 1977, the original 1 penny was intended for transit. And we only adopted a penny at that particular, I mean, half a cent at that particular point. When we pass this on November 3rd, and when it kicks in on January 1st of 2026, then 7/8 of a penny will actually be going for its intended purpose of transit. Had we gone for the whole penny, we would have had about $4 billion additional funding for transit. And that shows how much the 1/8 or so can generate over a long period of time. We're way behind in our funding for transit, way behind Austin and Houston and Dallas. But we hope that the voters will join us in voting yes for Proposition A for the Advanced Transportation District. It'll be very close to the bottom of your ballot. In many of the San Antonio precincts, it will be the last thing on the ballot. If you live in this, the school district of San Antonio, they have a few bond proposals that are below this. And in some of the Northeast school district precincts, they have school board members that'll be behind this. But look towards the bottom of the ballot and look for the Advanced Transportation District Proposition A and vote yes. Mary Alice, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Bob. That was well interpreted, and that's correct. The voters must, at the end of look for these propositions at the very end of a very long ballot, and so we encourage them not to give up their opportunity to vote for the future of San Antonio in those 3 propositions that our community in San Antonio so needs right now. With the pandemic, we need folks ready to go to work, but we also need the transportation to get them to work. And so they're key together, hand in hand, for our communities. And we know that the population of San Antonio is going to continue to grow in the future. So we must have expanded growth to areas in San Antonio with good buses that are will have the new technology in them as well, and that will improve the quality of the air in our roads as we continue to grow with more traffic in our roads. We will be able to maintain that growth as well with good quality air, as I stated. They are key things that I think folks that are handicap access are requiring of us in any big community. How do they get to a medical appointment? Well, we've got options for you to call in ahead of time, obviously with a week's notice, perhaps even, and get a VIA link out to your home to pick you up on time to get you to your medical appointment that you have scheduled. And so those are key things that we can add on time and be able to, for our handicap and elderly that need to get across town. I know it's difficult for individuals who are on a wheelchair to get that wheelchair in the car and still get on the road to your appointment. So these are key things that we want to provide and be able to be helpful in San Antonio.
If I might, Mary Alice,
Yes.
5 months ago today, my life changed
That's
when
right.
I stumbled and fell and had a spinal cord injury. So I'm now one of the people who uses VIA Trans to get to various places.
Right.
And before COVID, there were about 4,000 people a day using VIA Trans services. Now, as a board member, we were having to look at cuts in our service when the virus first hit. We didn't know about our funding sources. We did know that we were going to be losing a lot of money, revenue from sales tax, and we knew that that we had cut off fares because of wanting to protect our riders and protect our bus operators. So our revenue was down, and we were going to have to make cuts before the Congress passed the CARES Act and funded some of it. But among the changes, they were going to cut some of the some of the routes near my home.
Yes.
Well, in order to qualify for Via Trans, you have to live within 3/4 of a mile of a route.
Okay.
And so if that route had been cut off, service to my community would have gone away. And I think throughout, as cuts would have been made throughout San Antonio, there were about 1,400 of our people who are handicapped who depend on Via Trans today would have lost their service. I'm glad that didn't happen. We need to make sure it doesn't happen, but we need to fully fund our operation, and we need to be looking forward to the 1 million people who are moving here in the next 20 years. So another reason for people to vote yes, vote for.
Correct. Thank you, Bob. That was great because you do have a personal story. I know that
Absolutely.
Henry's father, years ago when he was alive, had to get to medical appointments in the medical center. And he would call in because his wife, Elvira Cisneros, had difficulty getting that wheelchair in the back of the car, herself being up in age as well, and getting both of them to that medical appointment in the medical center. And it was an easy choice for her to help her husband get on to that Via Trans and get to the doctor's appointment. So it's a necessary opportunity that we cannot do away with for our elderly and for our folks that are handicapped. So I'm pleased to be on this call promoting that today and encouraging you to even call to go vote with the Via Trans so that we can get your vote in and you count, and we're here to support it. Thank you.
So let me just encourage, if you have a question for one of our panelists today, to use your WOVA app or Whova, I'm sorry, in the Q&A, and I will be happy to read your questions and communicate your chat messages to the panelists. Can you talk a little bit about, and also for our attendees, if you've heard things that aren't quite matching up with what our panelists are saying today, let's talk to them. They're here. They're able to answer those questions. I know one of the things that's being talked about is that this is a new tax, and one of our panelists has already addressed that issue. But what else are you guys hearing that doesn't quite match up, that we can go ahead and clear the air, dispel a myth, and give you good facts that will help y'all in deciding whether this is the vote that you need to be making in November or not. I know that our local VIA has actually been recognized around the country as doing a lot with very little. But we know that people still, what has being historically and chronically underfunded meant for VIA? What are we not being able to offer our residents because we've operated on so little for so long? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, for one thing, recently Houston had a multi-billion-dollar proposition on its ballot which passed. And on November the 3rd in Austin, they have a multi-billion-dollar proposal on their ballot. That will give them adequate funding, so when the federal government offers a matching program, you put 50% of the money in and we'll put 50% of the money in, they can take advantage and really do the type of transit that is necessary, not only for now, but for the extreme growth that we're experiencing in the next few years. VIA simply does not have that kind of funding because we are so underfunded. Now, I can tell you, having been on the VIA board for the last 4 years, I have the highest admiration for the administration and for the women and men who work for VIA. We have one of the best maintenance departments in the world, and we keep our transportation, our units, our buses operating for a couple of years longer than most of them do, saving our money. Our new CNG buses have taken about 95% of the NOx gases out of the air, meaning we have a cleaner city. So all of these types of things, they're outperforming our competition in the other cities because we have to. And we're going to continue to outperform them once we even get adequate funding. But how many people like driving in Austin? You know, it's not much fun. And I had a very severe traffic accident north of I-35, north of Austin. So I know what the problems are. But a city the size of Austin is moving to San Antonio in the next 20 years. And they're going to bring their cars and their boats and their trailers and their pickups, but they're not bringing any roadway. So the average commute time is going to be expanding considerably. So even if a person never sets foot in a bus, they are going to be impacted by the amount of traffic coming in here. What we want to do is build a transit system that will get people, the people that Marissa talked about a while ago, those who are essential workers and who don't own a vehicle, they need to get to work. They're providing services for us. And we need to be able to get them to work and keep as much traffic off of our roadways as possible, because that will benefit all of us in the long run.
Bob, can you talk a little bit about the jobs that aren't coming to our community because we don't have a comprehensive public transportation system, because we've been historically and chronically underfunded? Can you speak anything to that?
Well, you know, I think
what jobs are we missing out on?
I think City Council and the mayor were criticized a couple of years ago for not really putting a full court press trying to get Amazon to come when all these cities throughout the country were competing for Amazon. And one of Amazon's criteria was they had to have a very, very good transportation system. And ours simply did not meet the needs of an Amazon. And we have to be prepared for these opportunities, but we need to be prepared for the right now. There are people right now, as somebody said a while ago, if we were able to service Schertz, Cibolo, Universal City area, that they would ride it if we could. There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of needs, and we need to be able to be exploring these needs, but every one of them comes with a price tag. And so the more people that we serve, and the more people who can get from where they are now to where they need to be via mass transportation, the better our city will be in the long run.
And I guess I would add, if we could make the wait time up to 20 minutes on our bus stops, I think that would encourage folks to be able to ride more often and not being out in the sun for a longer period of time while they wait for the bus transportation schedule to be changed, or to require them that they get the transportation, get to the job on time, get to their appointments that they have on time. So those are kind of key questions, I think, that we encourage VIA to keep in mind for our community as well. And these two propositions, and there are three obviously on the ballot, all work hand in hand for us. Whether it's the pre-K and the kids that are going to go to school, and the mom that has to get to the job, and there's only one vehicle in the home, then dad's got to take the vehicle to work, and mom's got to ride the bus to get them to the pre-K school, and then in turn ride to her job as well. So it's a family decision to keep their schedules on time, whether it's a rainy day or a hot summer day, as we've had the heat here in San Antonio this summer. So again, we have the slogan, keep SA moving, and we want to hear from our community, and you can register to listen to it. And we will have it on every Wednesday, is my information. Is that correct, Melanie?
Yes, that's what Marissa had communicated, and we here at Disability SA are definitely promoting all of those teletown halls and all of the opportunities to continue to learn about the work of VIA because it is such an essential service to the disability community. There have, one of those myths that circulates, and forgive me because I stepped out a little bit at the beginning of Marissa's presentation, but there have been myths about the low ridership of VIA. Was that addressed earlier, or is that something you can speak to?
We haven't talked about that, but before the COVID hit, we had a 6% increase in ridership last year. And one of the reasons for that was with the help of the city of San Antonio and the frequency, as Mary Allison mentioned a while ago, when you have frequent routes, people are going to ride it because they don't need a timetable. They can just stand outside and within 10 minutes or so, there'll be a bus that comes by. So we had a significant increase in the ridership. And almost all of the universities or colleges in San Antonio have signed into a partnership so that their students only have to show their student ID to be able to ride the bus. And we've cut out charging for transfers because that was an inequitable charge. So VIA has done a lot of innovative things to promote ridership and to serve our community. And I think that we'll get our ridership back. Throughout the whole problem, we've only gone down about 50% in our ridership. Some of the transit systems throughout the country have gone down 80 and 90% in their ridership. We've gone down 50%. So what that tells me is these are folks who continue to ride because they have no other opportunity. They are working in our hospitals, they're working in our government agencies, they're working in school. They need VIA to get to work. And it's a vital community service that we provide, and we need to make sure that it is properly funded.
So, and in some cases, their job starts at 7 o'clock. A shift for a nurse starts at 7 to 3. So they're riding the bus pretty early in the morning before some of us are on the road as well to our jobs. So you probably don't see them crowding the bus in the morning at that hour because you're not out on the road as yet. So, and then they're coming home at 3 or 4 to pick up the kids from school. Go ahead.
One of the myths is that people on the north side where I now live after living in the inner city for 35 years, I now live by Blossom Athletic Center. And one of the myths is that people on the north side don't ride the bus. Well, they certainly haven't gotten on the bus with me and see that that's not accurate. You may get on a bus that has 3 or 4 people on it, but they have stops along the way. They pick up people, and by the time they get to the North Star Transit Center, there's 18, 19 people there. And by the way, when we're on 281, we're passing vehicles, 9-passenger vehicles that have 1 person in them. So, we perform a service, get people to where they need to go, and if we can expand the routes, expand the opportunities that Marissa was talking about, we can serve even better. And by the way, one of the best kept secrets is the senior fare. The senior fare doesn't cost anything for people to sign up for it if they're 62 or older. And they can ride between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. for a quarter. And on weekends, it's free. And
wow, that's great.
So Bob, speaking of your personal experience, a lot of people feel like they don't want to vote yes for this proposition because public transportation isn't something they need. So they don't want to see that 1/8 of a cent go to something that they're not personally using. You've recently experienced a change in your life that you weren't expecting. Tell us how that might relate, or why would somebody want to consider funding public transportation if they don't personally use it?
Well, I was a frequent bus rider. Now I'm a VIA trans rider. But just to give you an example, a neighbor of mine told me yesterday that she had a major accident recently where she broke both of her ankles, and now she is a VIA trans rider. Well, she has a wonderful vehicle, but she can't drive, and so she rides Via Trans. Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the next few seconds, and a stumble, a fall changes your life, and all of a sudden you need something that you thought you'd never need. And is it going to be there for you? So I hope it doesn't happen to people, but people who drive vehicles all day long up and down 281 benefit from the cars that are not on the road because people are on a Via bus. So I hope that people will understand that there is a common good here. They may not need the transportation, but somebody that serves them in the hospital, or somebody who's transportation to be able to get to the job that can serve them. I hope that people are thinking in terms of the common good and what's going to be happening in San Antonio in the next 20 years. I lived in Houston in the 60s, and I remember when they said Houston was going to double in size in 20 years. Quite frankly, I thought that was the Chamber of Commerce speaking, but it did double in size in less than 20 years, and it's going to happen here in San Antonio. And I'm asking people to vote for this proposition so that we're prepared for what's coming.
So one of the other things that I've read is that if we vote on the proposition measure and this gets accepted, that it talks about that 1/8 of a cent being allocated to Via public transit services in perpetuity. And that means that there will be a lack of oversight, that we won't have any control over how this money is spent anymore if we're not voting on it every once in a while. Can you speak to the oversight that Via actually really does have?
I have worked with a lot of different entities. I have worked for the state of Texas. I've worked for Harris County. I've worked with 40 or so different school districts. I've worked with a lot of bureaucracies, and by far the most transparent and the most efficient and effective one that I have worked with has been Via. They have a very, very well-run operation, very, very ethical people at the helm. When they passed the 1/2 cent sales tax back in 1977, it was in perpetuity. When the Advanced Transportation District was created, I think in 2004, that 1/4 cent was in perpetuity. In Houston, Austin, and Dallas, that 1 cent that they commit to transit is in perpetuity. Now, I'm a person who voted 4 times for the aquifer protection and the trail system. I am really thrilled that the city of San Antonio has found a compromise so that they continue funding the aquifer protection. And I have confidence that the county or the city will come up with a plan for the trail system. Now, just from a personal standpoint, when you talk about protecting the aquifer, where are the other cities? Where are the other counties that benefit from that aquifer protection? They're not paying a penny towards that protection. Only the citizens of the city of San Antonio pay for that. And I would like to see everybody who benefits pays their fair share. Because I think if we did that, we would have the adequate funding to protect our precious water supply and would also be able to finish the trail system that benefits so many people.
So you bring up an excellent point that we have found a compromise and alternative funding for the aquifer. What are the alternative funding sources? Where else could we go to see more money coming into our public transportation system?
Well, as I mentioned, matching funds from the federal government would be the ideal thing, but you have to have the portion, in your bank account to match what the federal government comes up with. That's why Austin's having their huge bond election, which would be a property tax increase in Austin, but that would give them the money to leverage federal funds. And I'm talking about in the billions of dollars. So our opportunity for funding for VIA is limited, whereas funding for other sources, might take a different course. But the sales tax is basically the opportunity that we have at this particular stage for funding.
Do either of y'all have any closing remarks?
I would just reiterate what we said. There is no new tax in this proposition that are proposed by the city, because we know and understand that our community wants the jobs and the training in order to earn good wages for some of the people that have been let go of their jobs. It's been a pandemic, a surprise to all of us that it has lasted this long. But it is what it is. So now we are planning for the future for San Antonio. And how are we in this community doing it? We're doing it in this fashion. Get folks ready to work, but yes, have the transportation via ready to promote the transportation mobility for all this community as we continue to grow. It is not, it's one that we in San Antonio begin to get serious about and can, in the way that other cities in Houston and Dallas now have used their penny given to them years ago as well. So it's a hand in hand as we continue to move forward, but we need every voter to understand what we have shared today. It is no new tax. It is for VIA to continue a better scheduling of opportunities for the individuals that need to get to work. And I think the 58% of the ridership have no car. And even folks like students that need to get to UTSA at 1604, in some cases because they don't have a good, strong vehicle, or because they have courses and live more center locations in the city, they need to ride the bus out to UTSA. So we access different avenues for different populations and needs in our community. And we can do that, but we need the funding, we need the support for us to move forward. And Bob has talked about his unique experience of now even doing the Via Link. And so there are other opportunities as this city grows, and the senior elderly opportunities that are going to be out there for them. Let's help our community as we've asked you to vote yes in favor of this on our ballot November the 3rd. And there's opportunities for you to vote early. Henry Cisneros, my husband, and I will vote early. October 13th is the date that it begins, so that there'll be no long lines towards the end of the voting, but opportunities for us to take advantage of AT&T centers, of the UTSA, of Our Lady of the Lake voting places that will be offered in addition. Why? Because this is a big year. It is a presidential election with many, many things on the ballot. And we are reaching out to you to support us in this effort to move our city of San Antonio forward into the future as we begin to really grow and can sustain it, our growth, and be able to look to you as a population that we consider important.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
And I have already voted by mail. And so the disability community and those over the age of 65 have the opportunity to vote safely from home and to take your time probably on every one of the positions and look for the Advanced Transportation District. But I ask you to do more than just vote. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your sons and daughters. Let them know the importance of Via Trans. Let them know the importance of having a transportation system that serves you and serves the entire community. We need your help in passing this. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for your support.
And Bob, I see your sign there, your yard sign in the background, vote yes for transit. Are those available for those of us who would like to visibly align with the proposition?
We do have a limited number of signs available. If you see under my name there, Bob the Union Guy, that's me. Bob the Union Guy at AOL.com. Give me a call and we'll do our best to get you a sign.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the two of you.
By the way, the Central Labor Council of the AFL-CIO has unanimously endorsed this proposition. So we hope that you'll follow our lead.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. I think the newspapers have also.
Yes.
Right?
Well, thank you both for your time and for helping us to learn about the proposition, dispel some of the myths that we've read and have seen out there. And as much as transportation is imperative, public transportation is imperative for the residents of San Antonio with disabilities, we appreciate the time and effort that y'all have dedicated to moving this proposition forward in the community. So on behalf of the disability community, I'm going to appreciate you for your efforts and sharing with us the information we need to go out and share it with others.
Thank you.
Thank you.